The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you a songwriter? Are you looking to turn your songwriting passion into a full-time gig? Whether you are just at the start of your songwriting journey or a seasoned industry professional, this show is made for you. Welcome to the Songwriter Show, bringing together songwriting news, interviews, and community. Now, welcome your host, Sarantos.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I welcome you back to the Songwriter Show. I'm your host, Sarantos, a solo music artist who's been writing lyrics for as long as I can remember. Words are especially important to me, and that's why I'm so thrilled to host this show and share every Tuesday evening with you. I believe that every song is a story. Songwriter Show is broadcast live on number one ranked W4CY Radio and has listeners in all 206 countries in the world and every state in America. The station is licensed with ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and Sound Exchange, and has many partnerships throughout the music industry, including iHeartRadio and exposure to over 300 million listeners. I'm going to tell you a little bit about tonight's first guest, Marilynn Hughes. Marilynn founded the Out of Body Travel Foundation in 2003. She's written over 98 books, 40 magazines, and around 15 CDs on out-of-body travel and comparative religious mysticism. These books, along with accompanying music and art, are all available for a free download. Marilynn has experienced, researched, written, and taught about out-of-body travel and mysticism since 1987 and has appeared on many radio and television programs to discuss thousands of out-of-body experiences. Welcome to the show, Marilynn. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for joining us tonight.
And thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. So you've been doing this since 87. What is there one story that sticks out in your mind?
Wow. Ironically, no, because there's so many. But yeah, I mean, I can pull one out of the hat for sure. I had this one beautiful experience many years ago where I was shown the 54 steps of the Holy Mass. And I was taken into the mystical heavens, and it was every step of the Holy Mass was taking you one step higher into the galactic heavens. And when the host was consecrated, you were up in one of these really lofty spheres, and there was this sparkly light surrounding the host. In the experience that I had, St. Padre Pio was there, and he was the priest undergoing this experience. It was beautiful. But literally, I've had so many thousands of experiences. I could talk about a whole bunch of them,
Sure. Now, the one thing, obviously, being a songwriter, I have to ask you about, what music is with these experiences. Does it have words? Does it not have words? Is it uplifting? Tell me a little bit about that, because obviously I think our listeners really want to hear about that.
That's a great question, and actually exactly what we're here for. When you're traveling in the mystical spheres, you'll hear a lot of different kinds of music. Now, in terms of the songs that I've written a lot of songs with that are music and words. They're a little bit of a country feel, but not exactly. There's a little bit of a pop twist to them, but they're very, very mystical. The words are different than I think most people would expect. They're relating to mystical experience. However, in the out-of-body travel states, you'll experience a lot of things. Some of the most amazing things I've experienced sound-wise has been when you're flying through some of these really grand vistas of the spirit, and you're hearing these symphonies that do not yet exist down here on Earth, and they are so beyond words in terms of their beauty. And I can only just dream of how amazing it would be to be able to bring that down to the earth. But one of the things I've definitely experienced through the out-of-body travel journeying is that much of what we see as creativity, but it also goes into, the sciences, are things that come to us from above to below. And so, I would imagine that many of our greatest composers and a lot of our musicians and songwriters are touching into some of these very highly spiritually charged realities, whether they're aware of them or not.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think the one thing that's really debated in music and songwriting right now is people are very scientific. There's artificial intelligence making music now. And I read this the other day where it's like, it's about what you feel. It's not always about algorithms and, constructing a melody in this way every time or the chord progression. And I think that kind of gets to that other realm or that surreal, it's all about the feeling.
That's so true, because even in the mystical spheres, what you sense when you hear these things is that there are certain pieces of music that are highly energized. And we see that down here as well, where certain things are just highly energized and reach people on a deeper level. And what happens with that is, whether it becomes like something of an eternal nature rather than just something that's grounded, like what you're talking about with artificial intelligence, it's really not something you can put into a machine. It is something that comes from the, unconscious spirit of humanity. And sometimes the most simple of musical compositions can become the most moving or the ones that reach the most people. And I think it has a lot to do with the soul qualities that are attached to it. And so it's not always about high technicality. It's about tone. It's about rhythm. It's about how things are meant to manifest in these worlds below.
Sure. Do you have a favorite genre of music?
I like so many different types of music. I've always loved country music from the time I was very young. I love classical music. Gregorian chant is probably my favorite. But I love rock. I love, a lot of the rock that came from my era, which would be the 80s and the 90s rock. I think I'm one of those people that likes a lot of types of music. I love the spiritual music that people are putting out for meditation that they call New Age music, all the relaxation type things. But I love all of it.
Yeah, you're hitting home here, because I'm an 80s child, and I also have released meditation music. I put out a sleep CD last year. Some of the stuff you're talking about, New Age, I've done a couple New Age songs. But the thing a lot of people don't know about me, when I was I don't remember if it was 7th grade, I was in the choir. And, you mentioned Gregorian chants and stuff. And it's very interesting when if you go to church and you listen to their humming and their chants, and there's a lot of very hypnotic, relaxing, they know what they're doing, the melody, and if you think about it, this has been passed down how many generations now? So it's got to be appealing to people. Otherwise, they wouldn't still be singing out and chanting what they're doing.
Oh, it is so meaningful. And ironically, the last book, before the one I just released, called The Limb of the Redemption, I did a bunch of research into the liturgies that are behind these Gregorian chants. Ironically, when I was young and an 80s child too, I think one of the first major papers that I did was on Gregorian chant. But I think a lot of people don't realize Gregorian chant is liturgy. These are the words that were put out by the apostles and by the original fathers of the early church to create the actual liturgy. So the meaningfulness is profoundly deep. I also wrote another book called The Primordial Seed, which actually takes it back even further, because what you see here as you go back into ancient Judaism and the way that they did chant, it goes all the way back to the very beginning of time. And there are ancient sacred texts that talk about this liturgical chanting that transfers and goes around from heaven to earth between the angels. And this is a way that we are able, as physically incarnate human beings, to actually kind of stay the flow, the movement of the angelic realm and the heavenly realms. It's such a beautiful thing because it really does go back all the way to the beginning of time. It's even mentioned in some of these very old books in relation to Adam. Hearing the sounds of the chanting from the angels, which was the original singing of the hours, and that's where it began. It began in Judaism, and Christianity now has the hours as well, but it's very, very ancient.
Yeah, and I think music is so universal and it bonds us together. It harps on our emotions, but even within the church, they try to hit every sense. They get your olfactory senses with the incense, everything visual with the either icons or statues, depending what religion you're into. I have a question for you. How do you get people to take you seriously? I'm assuming with the books you've written, you must meet some resentment from people that either don't believe in religion or some of the stuff that you're talking about. How do you get them to take you seriously?
Well, I think I've just been around long enough that I have a big enough following, and I do have a lot of books out, that I think the biggest thing is when people read the books that I've written, they understand that it's a really serious journey and a real serious path. There are people who are definitely against religion, and you don't really do much with that. You just kind of reach the ones who are opening up to it. You'd be surprised how many people come from that kind of a standpoint and then have a moment where all of a sudden they're just on fire for wanting to learn about these things that they haven't spent much time on in the rest of their life. So we get a lot of, there's spirituality and religion. One of the books I wrote was called The Near-Death and Out-of-Body Experiences of the Prophets, Saints, Mystics, Sages, and Ascetics in World Religions. We forget that all world religions, major, minor, were created from a moment of revelation, which in most cases was an out-of-body experience. So spirituality and religion are much more closely intertwined than I think people realize. Of course, I've heard all the different, arguments people have, against religion, saying I'm spiritual but not religious. The reality is that you've got spirituality is in religion is in spirituality, and we have people who manifest it differently in different faiths. Some people are on a more sincere path. Some people follow it more culturally, and that's a big one of the any religion really, because any religion has the same flaws, where you come in from the spiritual world and you have to build a religion in structure. And so there's going to be problems in all the different religions. A bunch of my books are about out-of-body travel in world religions, and it goes through all of the different world religions and compares and contrasts some of the things that they say about different issues and subjects. And that's you'd be surprised when you go to the mysticism that the mystics aren't that much in disagreement across the board in terms of different religions. If you speak to Rumi, who is a Sufi Islamic mystic, versus St. Teresa of Avila, who's a Catholic mystic, versus, a bodhisattva in the Buddhist faith, there's a lot of similarities in the mystical revelation. It's when you're dealing with the religion on the ground, so to speak, that you're going to have more of the conflicts. Once it's taken to the mystical, it is taken to a higher sphere where a lot of these so-called or apparent contradictions actually kind of cease to exist.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So you answered one of the questions that one of the listeners had, but before we get to another question they have, what's the coolest road trip you've ever been on?
The coolest road trip would probably be when I went to Kentucky to go to the Natural Bridge and went backpacking there. It was great. That was fantastic. They have wild natural blueberries out there. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah,
Are
so
they
we
safe to eat?
Oh, yeah. We ate them off the trees and
wow, that'd be cool.
To make a blueberry pie out of them out while we're camping. So it was great.
Part of me, I always have this romanticized impression how cool it'd be to like live off the land and just be able to eat whatever you want wherever you want. But I might be getting food poisoning if I kind of ate whatever I saw. But
yeah, that can happen.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's funny because I've always had that too, and I have always wanted to just homestead, grow your own food, do all that stuff. My mother was really quite the gardener, so she taught me quite a bit, and I've always thought that would be really neat too.
Yeah. I got to ask you this question just because it's up your alley, but what is your spirit animal?
Oh, a mountain lion.
Mountain lion. Okay, why?
Because that's what I was shown. In its idealist sense, when you're dealing with shamanism, people are going to have a mystical experience or an out-of-body experience where they're shown what their spirit animal is. In my case, that's what I was shown. The mountain lion, for me, has to do with, kind of a controlled fierceness, having the courage to move forward, but also having the wisdom to step back a little bit.
Sure. What were you like in high school?
I was a nerd.
So was I. Did you see Revenge of the Nerds? Was that not the coolest movie from the 80s?
It was great, and all the sequels, of course.
Wait, what was that guy that would chase around the nerds in the frat house? Ogre? No, what was his name?
I don't remember their names.
The big built guy that hated nerds and then became one of them in like the third movie or something like that. The football player. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I was quite the book nerd, and I'm still kind of quite the book nerd. So I guess that's kind of expected.
It's all right. Nerds are taking over the world. We're everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's true.
It's kind of funny when I post on socials every day, and I don't know, maybe once a week or twice a week, I'll post something nerdy or geeky kind of or techie. And it's amazing. My socials explode. So I should probably stick to that more often. But, we're a minority, but we're powerful. Look at what we've done with the Marvel Universe. We're driving what kind of movies they make now. Oh,
that's very true. And, the Marvel Universe, ironically, I've often wondered about the creator of Marvel in terms of his spiritual life because because he's definitely, touching into some things that would be coming from mythological and mystical realms. So
absolutely,
that'd be interesting to ask him for sure.
And the interesting thing, I know Stan Lee just passed away, and he was one of the big creators of Spider-Man and a lot of these things. But it's fascinating how they have. Look at Captain Marvel. It's geared towards women, and you don't need a significant other. And I like how the Black Panther. Every one of these movies has their own demographic. And it really just kind of goes to show you that, first of all, we're all the same. We all bleed the same color blood. And, no one should discriminate against anybody. But it's amazing that back then, that was such a unique thing that they did. I mean, now diversity is well known and everybody does it. But back then, nobody did it.
Oh, yeah. And the characters that he brought out back then would have been much more controversial at the time than they are now.
Sure.
As you were mentioning earlier, the kinds of things that push against bringing some things to the surface and new ideas. And the Marvel Universe is really kind of, in some respects, at least from my point of view, would be a little bit of a mystical universe, Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. So before I ask you this next listener question, I just want to put it out there that if anybody needs me to star in a Marvel superhero movie, I'm available, and I would do it for free. So just to kind of put that out there, because you never know who's listening.
Oh, yeah, me too. Me too, yeah. Sure.
All right. So we have a listener question here. How do people know what their animal is? I assume their spirit animal is what they're asking you.
Well, most people that I communicate with have some type of experience that leads them to that understanding, whether it's a mystical out-of-body experience, sometimes it's intuitive. So I think that, prayer is really important in asking to find that out, and then being receptive to paying attention to what might be coming to you. Some people will learn about their power animal in a dream. And so you want to listen to your dreams real closely as well, because the spirit world speaks to us in dreams as well. And ironically, in a lot of respects, with the shamanism, that's how it was done with the tribes. You would have some type of vision quest that would eventually reveal to you not only your path in life, because the vision quest was to discover your destiny and understand where you needed to go forward. But it was also very often where people discovered what their spirit animal was.
Wonderful. So we're going to listen to your song now. Tell us in a minute what inspired it and what you want us to know about the song.
If you're playing I Feel the Change, that was written.
That one.
That one was written with a lot of hope for our world at a time when we had gone through, in the last 20, 30 years, we've gone through a lot of hopeless times. This was shortly after a hopeless time where something bad had happened in our country. And this song was meant to show that we have the power to change it. And we have the power to move forward into something greater and bigger and brighter and more spiritually loving and light-filled than what we unfortunately often see.
Okay. Well, we're going to listen to your song right now, and then we'll come back and ask you a few more questions, okay?
Sure, thanks.
Okay. Here we go.
There's a change, it's a coming within inside of our lives. I can feel it in the darkness of the night. The sky is on fire from the hatred of the land. I can feel it in the darkness of the night. It's a crazy thing, but I feel it, and it tatters my soul. It's the helpless feeling of a people who've been bought and sold. There's a change, it's a coming from inside of our souls. We must cherish our differences, I'm told. Rage is a fire that's put out with love. Let there be peace and justice in the world. It's a crazy thing, but I feel it, and it tatters my soul. It's the helpless feeling of a people who've been bought and sold. be no more to overcome. Just a people who love one and all. It's a crazy thing, but I feel it, and it tatters my soul. It's the helpless feeling of a people who've been bought and sold. I can feel it in the darkness of the night. I can feel it in the darkness of the night.
And now, welcome this week's special guest.
Well, that was very elegant and sweet and very pleasant to listen to.
Thank you so much, Sarantos.
I kind of felt like when I was listening to that, I was having an out-of-body experience and I was floating up into the clouds or something.
Oh, that's great. That would be an excellent intention there.
Which is exactly what you were going for, I'm sure, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm. You know, I wrote like about 100 songs that were put into a five set CD thing called the Out of Body Travel Foundation Hymnal on CD, and it's all intended to help uplift the soul into those spheres.
Yeah, I totally get it. At the end of the show, like I said, I've done a couple New Age songs, and coincidentally, when I was looking at your story, I thought it'd be cool to play a New Age song at the end.
Sure.
So if you get a chance, check out Close Your Eyes, and I think you would enjoy the music video because it's definitely about, I don't want to give it away, but I definitely think you'd enjoy the music video. It's right up your alley.
Oh, great. I would love to check it out. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what do you do in your free time? Is it all work? Do you have a hobby? Do you have something? Obviously, we know you do some stuff with music and singing, but what do you do other than that?
Well, I have a really wonderful dog. I love to take my dog for walks. I do a lot of meditation. I love to meditate. It's a really big, important part of, just my process. I read a lot. I really am a book nerd. So I do a lot of research that ends up in my books eventually, but I really just enjoy reading as well. So it's really kind of something I just like to do as well. So, I like to go to the pool when it's warm enough to do so, and we live in Arizona, so we're just about there. And so a lot of those kinds of things, a lot of meditation, love to hang out with my dog. I've got this great cat.
Okay.
Kind of simple that way, and I'm not real complicated.
Simple is good. The older I get, simple is what I want.
I relate to that. Yes, me too.
Yeah. Tell me what the cool, if you could throw out a book that you've read that really sticks with you right now, what would you suggest for me or the audience to read?
Well, gosh, my favorite book of all time would be The Spiritual Life by Father Adolphe Tanqueray. It's, really the classic work on mystical theology. So I love that one. But I also would throw out the Urantia book, which is something maybe not everyone's heard of, but it's spelled Urantia, the Urantia book. Very interesting document. I read the whole thing. It's huge. Highly recommend both of those. I have a lot of books I could recommend in a lot of areas. Yeah, like for instance, the vow of the Bodhisattva. I'm trying to remember what that's called. The Sutra of the Past Vows of the Earth Store Bodhisattva is a great book too. That's a bodhisattva, a Buddhist monk who would travel out of body into the lower hell realms and liberate souls. Very interesting text. I love the writings of St. Alphonsus Liguori. very big fan of St. Francis and Clare of Assisi. So anything, I have all the books and all the stuff that is kept in terms of the documents of the early Franciscan order. I also am very interested in ufology. So I read a lot of stuff on the extraterrestrial phenomenon, and part of that comes from my mystical experiences as well, because I've had experiences with the extraterrestrial, wrote a book about that, and so very interested in what's going on in terms of the science and the disclosure of those kinds of things. I'm reading a set of books right now called Journey to the West, which is from China, which is an interesting Buddhist text that kind of catalogs this spiritual journey of these monks who are seeking the ancient Buddhist texts, but they're falling into a lot of pitfalls along the way. It's a pretty classic text in China, and I'm finding that interesting as well. There's so many.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? Not in a book, but in person.
Ironically, that would go to great-grandpa, which was my husband's grandfather, my children's great-grandfather. He told me when I first met him, we had a really long conversation. He said, always question the source. And boy, is that the truth. Now that I'm older, you always question the source. So if people are giving you advice, question the source of that advice before you just automatically accept it as true or as being valid for your situation. If people are saying bad things about you, question the source, because there are some people who just do that. But question the source. That's taken me through life quite a bit. I always go back to that moment when he told me that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Tell us a little bit about your website in the last minute here. Where can people buy your music, your books? What's your website, your contact information?
Sure. We're at outofbodytravel.org. All of our books are available for free download, but they're also available to buy in paperback, digital, and also Audible formats, so you can do whatever you want there. We have a free course of study on the website that you can take that takes you through an extensive training to direct you and guide you into out-of-body experiences, and utilizes my books as well in that course of study, because I have a lot of books. We have a whole series of books that is just how-to. I think there's 9 of them that takes you deeper with each volume. Our books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Audible, everything. So they're just out there wherever you go. You should be able to find it. If you have any problems, you can always, or questions, just contact me at Marilynn Hughes at outofbodytravel.org. That's on the website as well, in case you get the spelling wrong, outofbodytravel.org. And you can go there, and everything is available for free, and you can contact me if you have any questions about where to begin or where to start.
Wonderful. Now, tell us, what's the one book that you've written that is either your bestseller or that you would recommend everybody read?
The Mysteries of the Redemption would be the one I recommend that everyone read and start with. It's kind of like my magnum opus, I guess. And one of the reasons I recommend it as well is because I've had so many readers who have spontaneous out-of-body experiences begin while they're reading the book. I remember when I was writing that book, I was told by the spiritual guardians around me that they were going to program the words in such a way that it would open people up to the experience. But I've definitely seen that happen over time and play out. So many readers, that's the one that really gets them going. So I usually recommend The Mysteries of the Redemption and Come to Wisdom's Door, which is just a really short book with a little bit of how-to instruction. And the two of those put together are a really good combination for someone who really wants to get started on out-of-body travel, or even just a spiritual journey in general. Even if you don't want to experience out-of-body travel, if you're just interested in expanding spiritually, this is going to help you a lot.
Okay, wonderful. I want to thank you for being on the show. And in closing here, I'm going to come back and say a few words, but we're going to listen to my song now. And again, it's called Close Your Eyes. It's a New Age song. I think it's right up your alley, and I hope the listeners enjoy it. And if you guys get a chance, please check out the music video. It's one of the coolest ones that I've done, and I don't want to spoil it. So this was a song released a couple years ago, and, and talking about the afterlife and talking about, obviously, death is a very powerful experience for all of us. So the music video essentially is about a happy family, and the father, who ends up being me in the video, passes away. And I think it's something that shows you how difficult it is for the family that you leave behind to go through that and to deal with death. It's something that has a finality to it. And I'm sure you've heard people say over and over that you don't remember what came before, so don't fear death, because it's just this peaceful thing you're going to go to after you're done with your time on this earth. But hopefully, Rebel, you ready to play the song now? Let's see if we can cue it up.
Well, and Sarantos, it's often harder for those left behind than it is for the soul traveling forward, because
absolutely,
and we forget that, because and it's good for people who are mourning to realize that the person who's traveling forward is surrounded by a great deal of love and protection and direction, and a lot of peace, and a lot of understanding. And so I think it helps to allow for the people left behind to do their grieving, to know that the person who's traveled on is very well taken care of.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you can find comfort in that, because my father passed away almost a decade ago, and he dealt with lung cancer, and he battled it for a long, long time, and he was in chronic pain. And when he finally passed, my mom, my sister, and I, we had this tremendous sense of relief that he was just not going to be in this agony and pain every day. And I think you're right. Not that none of us have died to be able to say that it's easier, but I totally get your point, and I respect that.
Well, and ironically, in a lot of what I do in the out-of-body experiences is work with people going through the afterlife journey, and I can tell you that's definitely the case. I've seen some truly beautiful, beautiful things.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. To listeners who may be artists, if you wish to be on the Songwriter Show, please email us or check out our website at songwritershow.com. Thank you again for listening. I hope your own unique story gets heard around the world. My name is Sarantos. Please join us here every Tuesday night to hear other amazing artists share their fascinating behind-the-scenes stories, right here at the Songwriter Show.
Thank you for listening to The Songwriter Show. To keep the momentum going, head over to www.songwritershow.com and join our free music community of artists, songwriters, and producers. That's www.songwritershow.com.